I'm a 19-year-old man who lives in a small town in Arizona. I work down in Phoenix at a mechanic shop where I do small auto repair jobs. I travel 60 miles to work every day on this one deserted highway to get there and back. I also do have a little bit of a bad habit with smoking cigars from my late grandpa, who I always really looked up to, and we used to smoke cigars together, and it led to my addiction to smoking a cigar after work. I live with my girlfriend and her parents, who are huge anti-smokers. I usually leave my job and go grab a cigar from this humidifier near my job. I usually light up and smoke behind the nearby Home Depot every day before I make the long drive home. I haven't ever been bothered by anyone up until about a week ago. I was just minding my own business, smoking a cigar behind the Home Depot and scrolling through TikTok. I looked up for half a second, and I had noticed this ratty old gold Nissan Versa parked across from me near the loading dock. I didn't pay attention at first to it, but then 20 minutes later, I noticed the same car, but this time there's two people sitting in the car just staring at me. I didn't know if they were just waiting for someone or if they were on their break, so I just paid no mind to it. Then about another 20 minutes go by. I go to put my cigar out, and I still see them there. At this point, I jump in my car, start the engine, and start to pull out of the parking lot. As soon as I go to turn on the main road to get to the I-10 to head home, I see the Versa in my rear view. Again, I pay no mind to it and then merge onto the main road and keep going on my way home. I eventually get on the highway and start heading towards home, but then I go to look in my rearview mirror and I see the same f***ing car still behind me. I decided to maybe let's see if they're actually following me, and I get in the next lane over and start accelerating, thinking I'm going to lose them. For reference, I drive a 2002 Cadillac DeVille DTS with a very powerful V8 engine, while they have a gutless little economy car. I started accelerating and passing almost everyone, getting in the HOV lane going triple digits until I passed the city limits of Phoenix, and I then started slowing back down. I thought that I had lost them and just started driving normally again, but then I saw the Versa 4 cars back gaining fast on me. So I started accelerating yet again, trying to put distance on us. I thought it worked and that was my final encounter with them. I get off my exit sometime later, and then I stop at a Maverick gas station to top off my gas after all that hard driving. I then go inside to grab a couple of energy drinks and to go to the bathroom. As soon as I come back outside, that same Versa was in the parking lot. I knew it was the same car, but there was no one in it this time. I then decided that I'm going to take a picture of the plates to report it to the police later on. I go to the rear of the car to find no license plate, and just when I was about to walk to my car, I then see 2 tall, skinny white guys with meth sores all over their faces, and they start running towards me. I jumped in my car, locked the doors, and tried starting my car so fast so I can get out of there. One of the guys runs over and actually starts banging on my passenger window and starts yelling at me. I didn't care what he had to say, so I just started pulling out of there like hell, and I didn't see the other guy get in their little Versa and attempt to box me in. I quickly go around him and almost lose control of the big boat of a car that I had due to the torque steer, but thank God I didn't. I started speeding through the desolate streets and quickly see a little side road. I then merge in there and start making random turns and head out in a random driveway with high shrubbery. I turn off my car and wait 10 minutes just to determine if I should go to the police or not. I started heading home, starting to question why they went after me. Did I provoke them in some way? There's no way they were security because that parking lot had no security. I still don't understand why they were so desperate to follow me 50 miles to a gas station in a desolate town. If they tried to rob me, I don't think they'd get much from a broke 19-year-old. I haven't told anyone this story but my girlfriend, and she told me to be careful and to stay away from that parking lot. I haven't returned to that parking lot ever since that day, and I now choose to smoke somewhere else. My name is Kylie, and I'm a 22-year-old female in Northern California. I research and create true crime videos. And while researching, one day I had stumbled upon a very scary human trafficking and or robbery scheme where people would scout you out in a store like Walmart and be in communication with someone on the outside who has a car waiting. I've been trying to find the videos about that since then, but I can't. Anyways, to set the scene, this took place around a month ago, February of 2025. I don't like to go to Walmart, but my grandma does. I've been taking her for the past 3 years since she can no longer drive due to her vision, but now she has cancer, and because of that, she appears weaker than she did even a few months ago. I've offered to go to Walmart for her to get her groceries myself, but she genuinely loves outing and is very specific about her produce. I picked her up with my 3-year-old daughter in the back seat, and I drove us to Walmart at around 3 in the afternoon. Everything seemed normal at first, and she was looking at the bananas for a while. She told me that I could go and get milk and a book that I've been dying to read before coming back to meet her at the bananas or in the bread section. I took my daughter and got those items within 4 to 5 minutes. My grandma doesn't have a cell phone, so it always has made me anxious to leave her alone in a store even for a moment. When I got to the banana display and didn't see her, I panicked momentarily before then remembering that she said she was heading to get bread next. However, when I got to the aisle, my heart dropped. No grandma. There are about 14 aisles between the produce where the bananas were and the milk where I had just been. I walked quickly around those 14 aisles 3 times and looked down every single aisle. No grandma. I finally found an employee and showed them a picture of her. He said that he hadn't seen her but would walk the 14 aisles. He started on the perimeter that had the meat and dairy while I'd started along the perimeter that bordered the baby section and toilet paper. Both of us looked down every aisle, and there was no sign of my grandma. That was it. I started going to the front of the store to ask a clerk to please say my grandma's name over the loudspeaker. Yet, as I approached the front, I saw my grandma sitting on a bench in front of the checker, and she had already paid for her groceries. I asked her where she had gone, and she told me that she had gone to look for bread, but that 2 women had started following her in the store. She initially thought that she was just being slow and that she was in their way. So she then confronted them and asked if they needed something, to which they shook their heads. They didn't take anything from the bread aisle. My grandma still wasn't immediately concerned, but decided to go to an entirely different section of the store which had the soaps. They were right behind her, and she had heard them whispering into a walkie-talkie. After that, my grandma decided it was best to check out and just wait for me at the front. I was of course alarmed by this, so I got my milk and book and took it to the cashier that was right in front of the bench where my grandma was sitting. Yeah, and as I was checking out, I had noticed an odd man who was standing between my grandma and I. I didn't think he was odd at first, but then I noticed that he didn't have any groceries or items. He also wasn't clearly waiting for someone, and I'm assuming that he wasn't waiting for the Claire store that was next to the benches. That really wouldn't make any sense. He was wearing a dark blue baseball cap, and he kept darting his eyes between me and my grandma. If you think I'm just being judgmental, I promise I'm not. The thing that set my alarm bells off was the fact that he was holding his phone upside down and he was talking into it like a walkie-talkie in a very hushed tone. He was looking at us. He wasn't doing the normal thing that people do whenever they're on the phone and accidentally space off while staring at you. No, this was deliberate. I grabbed my bag and gripped the card tighter. My 3-year-old was understandably oblivious to my panic, and so was my grandma. I told my grandma that it was time to go, and she got up off the bench to follow me. However, as she got up and started following me, the man had started following us too. My grandma didn't notice him, but she's hard of hearing, and I couldn't tell her privately that I thought he was following us. She's also the type to go into a state of panic and anxiety, and in her current physical state, I didn't want that for her. Thankfully, and I mean thankfully, there was a guy who was standing by the double doors checking the receipts. I whispered to him in a hushed tone about the man in the blue cap who was following us, and what my grandma had experienced with the 2 women. He looked at the guy and then looked at me, and then called the security guard over. She was a very intimidating woman. I say this in the best way possible, and she escorted us out the door. The man in the blue cap had stopped following us, but he raised his phone again to say something else. When I finally got my grandma and daughter in the car and locked the doors, I then told my grandma what had happened with the man in the blue cap. Please be aware of your surroundings, and if you're a woman especially, bring pepper spray and do not be afraid to ask for help. If I just had my grandma with me, I would have been a lot calmer since I can handle my own. But I'm not capable of protecting my grandma and daughter at the same time. I'm still not sure what the exact intention of those people was, but I surely do not want to know. For privacy reasons, I won't be giving my age or name. For a bit of context, this happened about 2 years ago, a few weeks after my little brother was born. Ever since we moved into this house, there's been this small room in the basement that's always locked. To show you how little anyone uses it, I don't even know what's in there, but I've always assumed it's just the utility stuff like meters or something. The room is really tiny, barely big enough to lie down in. Now let's get into it. My parents went away for a weekend together, leaving me, my older sister, and my baby brother, who was just a few weeks old at the time, at home. My parents trusted us to take care of ourselves since they've done this before. Anyway, that night my sister went out with friends and wasn't planning to come back until like 4 or 5 in the morning. I watched a good movie and, since it was already getting late, decided to put my little brother to bed in his room upstairs. I did that and came back down to watch another movie, but I ended up falling asleep. About 2 or 3 hours later, right around midnight, I woke up to these strange noises coming from upstairs. At first, I thought it was just the neighbors since they can be pretty loud and the walls are thin. But then I looked at the time and I realized that it was way too late for them to still be awake, let alone making that kind of noise. So I got closer to the stairs to investigate, and just as I was about to go up the first step, I heard the sound of something metal falling on the ground. Guess what? It was the key to the small room in the basement. I immediately grabbed my phone, and instead of calling the police, I texted my friends to tell them what was happening. One of my friends had the brilliant idea of calling the police for me. Suddenly, I had heard the bathroom door then slam shut. I knew it was that door because it makes a very specific creaking noise when it closes. I remembered my brother was sleeping upstairs, so I carefully went up to check if he was okay. Thankfully, he was fine. Still not fully grasping how much danger I was in, I went to the bathroom door. Since it opens inward, I decided to violently push it open, and I heard a man scream. I immediately shut the door and held it closed to keep him from getting out. He broke the window, and outside the bathroom there's this sort of balcony. Not a proper one, but you get the idea. It connects to the balconies of the neighboring houses, which are all really close together. He used that to escape. I grabbed my brother in arms, ran to the kitchen, and noticed that one of the knives was missing from the knife block. I picked up another knife and crouched in the corner of the living room, crying like never before. The police arrived and I opened the door for them. When they searched the house, they confirmed that the bathroom window was broken, and I had hit the guy so hard that there was actually blood on the floor. But the most shocking and traumatizing part was what they had found in the small basement room. There were blankets and cans of food. They concluded that he had been living there for several days. That's it. I hesitated a lot before posting this because it really affected me, and I'm sorry if the story isn't super clear. Some of the details are still jumbled in my head. Anyway, I hope you all found it interesting. This happened to me over 10 years ago, but I still think about how close I came to dying. I was already with my future husband when I met his cousin. We had a lot in common. We'd both struggled with addiction and anorexia. We'd talk on the phone and meet up to eat and see a movie, but he kissed me in his car, so I decided it was best if we stopped talking. I told my future husband about the kiss and he was understanding. I didn't tell him that his cousin got extremely upset over me turning him down. Some time had passed and we had started meeting up as friends. Since we were both starving ourselves, we always went to the same place, but after a couple of times, I felt like it wasn't healthy for either of us to meet up. He asked me to meet up one last time, and I stupidly said yes. We went to our place, and during dinner he was talking about his apartment and job, how happy he could make me. I got uncomfortable and I had asked him to drive me home. It was really late, and instead of driving me home, he drove me to the forest preserve. It was pitch black because all the lights were off. I immediately felt uneasy. We were alone in the parking lot, and I had a horrible feeling at this point that something was going to happen. He parked and turned off his car, then looked at me and said we were meant for each other. I didn't want to upset him, so I just said that he knew I was engaged and that we were just friends. He also had a history of violence, so I was terrified. He started getting really upset and almost crying. He said that he loved me. Then he put his arm around my neck and held his arm down really hard on the right side of my neck. His arm was around my neck, and I'd been looking straight ahead, when suddenly I woke up to a police officer at his window. He was asking if I was okay. I was really scared and confused. I had some vomit on my shirt and I'd wet my pants. He'd pressed down on my carotid artery for long enough that it knocked me out. He was also a wrestler in high school. He was telling the officer that we were fine and that I was just drunk. He got a ticket, but I was too afraid to say anything, because if he was arrested, my now husband's family wouldn't have blamed me, but that's what I thought at the time. I said I was fine, but that's why I wanted to go home now. I thought if I said it in front of the officer, he would drive me home because he took our names and he wouldn't risk trying something else. So he drove me home and didn't say anything. I don't know if he was trying to kill me or just got so upset that he went overboard. Regardless, he did almost kill me and it really messed me up. A person doesn't vomit and wet themselves after a neck compression unless they almost died. I told my now husband, but not right away because I felt like it was partly my own fault for meeting up with them. I only saw him a couple of more times during the holidays, and then eventually he stopped coming, but he didn't dare speak to me after what he did. If that officer hadn't shown up, I don't know if I'd still be here. Surprisingly, this is one of those stories I forgot all about until a few days ago, when I was talking to a school friend on a call and got reminded of this. She was pretty freaked out when I told her, and so I did think about it again. So some of the details are fuzzy, but I remember it pretty vividly. My family had just moved to America, and were renting the top portion of your regular suburban house in a pretty safe cul-de-sac. I had friends. They were triplets, about 3 or 4 houses down. Not far at all. Every day I'd hang out with them, and around 9 or 10 in the night, my older brother would make the 2-minute walk and come get me and then walk me home since I was pretty young. I want to say that he was around 11 or 12. One night he came to get me as usual. The sun wasn't fully down, but it was getting pretty dark. We started down the walk as normal when he had started casting glances over his shoulder. I didn't really notice until he shoved me hard away from the sidewalk in between 2 houses. Each house had a huge fence that separated their backyard, and he made me crouch behind the fence. I remember being really scared, but more so confused since I had no damn idea what the hell was going on. More specifically, he was a pretty big prankster, so I didn't really believe him when he then turned and said, "Walk behind the houses. I think someone's following us, bro." Looking back, he was probably trying to keep me calm. However, whatever calm was left in my tiny 8-year-old body was gone the moment I turned around and looked. This man had followed us behind the houses, and he was just by the edge of a few houses down near a very different fence line. He had a black hoodie on, black sweatpants, and white sneakers, and he had the hood up. I have pretty bad eyesight now due to some health problems, but back then it was crystal clear, and I could see with horrifying clarity that his jaw was hung open. Like he was just standing there with his jaw hung open. It was horrifying. I think now that I'm older, maybe he just had some kind of medical condition that affected his jaw, or maybe he did crack. I don't know. But back then, I could have sworn on God I was seeing some kind of demon. Anyway, my brother, when he saw me looking and getting ready to freak out, told me to just run as fast as I can to our house. We booked it. Neither one of us looked back, but we were scared out of our minds. Like I said, we only rented the top portion of the house, so the bottom part belonged to some other tenant. I don't even remember if she was home or not, but I remember tugging that thing open and locking it as fast as I could. And when I looked up, he was there in the yard a little way away from the door, just staring at us. My brother and I told my sister and mother immediately, but nothing ever came of it. Also, my father was away on a work trip at this time. The day after, we went to go meet my dad at his warehouse, which had a small live-in portion above it where we lazed around until he was ready to come home with us. Around dusk, he came up and told us that we might have to wait since the police were here. He walked us around to the back window of the small area to show us the police all around the backyard area of the warehouses to a white van parked on the grass by the edge of the woods. Like I said, I was pretty young, so I don't remember many details of what actually happened. But I do remember my dad telling us that they had found a man and woman in the van. The man, he said, had his mouth hung wide open. He seemed really disturbed telling me about the whole thing and wouldn't answer any more questions about the woman. Maybe she was dead. I've got zero ideas. I do know though that they were arrested on trespassing charges. I don't know anything else, and I haven't asked about it, and I doubt he'd remember. It's been over a decade and he's pushing 70. But it freaks me out to this day. I still can't believe it happened, and I don't have any answers for it. I talked to my brother briefly about it in hopes that he remembered more than I did, but all I really got was a long tirade about whatever medical condition that the guy probably had for his mouth to be like that. He's an annoying medical student now. Sometimes I think maybe he didn't mean any harm and was just drugged out of his mind, but this was like the world's safest neighborhood, and it doesn't explain why or how he showed up at my dad's workplace. I asked around a little for more information. I wasn't able to find a lot, but I did find out when my father moved away from that warehouse. The police found a dead body in a car near us. I'm not sure if this is the same van or not or when that happened, but take that as you will.